just wanted to ask you, you've been critical of the private sector, in fact, kind of like the idea of good policy countries only getting aid, same thing like investment-friendly countries get aid. So what do you think about this new idea of the RED campaign that kind of takes a different approach and doesn't do direct private sector investment, but capitalizes on the idea of like entrepreneurship in Africa? Do you think that we can really develop trade with those countries?
Well, there's a lot of stuff in that. So, to ask me again the first bit about, you said
the private sector. I believe we've been a little critical of the private sector, that they can't solely help development because they're only going to go into countries that are friendly for them for investment, you know, like a friendly environment where they have power, they have electricity, not perhaps like in Uganda. So do you feel like this RED campaign might be a different approach that they could take? Something that's not quite directly private sector investment, but similar idea.
I think I mean, you know, the argument about the private sector is really about this sort of the big capital flows that says, look, you know, the sort of free market argument, which was around partly in the early 1990s and then came back a bit with the Meltzer Commission at the end of the decade, which said, look, we don't need the World Bank to be making loans to Brazil or whatever, and we don't need the World Bank, period, because essentially, you know, private capital markets will provide the development finance that's needed, and you don't need the public sector to do more. I don't think that's true, and I don't think it's true for a number of reasons, but one of them is that this, you know, the sort of total amount of private capital flowing into emerging markets is very big, but it goes to, you know, a few successful emerging economies like Brazil, India, China, South Africa, etc. It doesn't go to sort of small West African countries, and so that's the point I think I was making there. Now, the RED campaign, I think, is a way of raising money from the private sector to put into things like the Global Fund for AIDS, TB and Malaria, which seems like there's no downside to that. I mean, if you can raise money by having a RED credit card so that when people go make a purchase, you know, 1% or 0.5% goes to help fund the Global Fund for AIDS and TB and Malaria, great. Now, but then there's another issue, which is entrepreneurship in poor countries. Now, I'm all for that. I'm all for, you know, trying to stimulate the private sector. But I do think that there is a slightly kind of weird quality sometimes to some people in the development debate, you know, that you get kind of lobbying Congress and so forth, who say, you know, I've discovered why Africa hasn't developed. It's because the aid agencies have always focused on giving money to the government. They've never tried to stimulate those entrepreneurs. Well, I mean, for one thing, it's just false. I mean, there's been plenty of attempts to engage with the private sector in Africa during the past. And for another, if you actually believe in the free market and the private sector, this is a very strange argument to make, because the argument is normally that, you know, if there's a market and there's a profit opportunity there, you don't need to do anything. I mean, an entrepreneur will do it for you because they will see the profit opportunity. So what public policy should be about is getting the overall policy framework right so that the entrepreneur feels empowered and does set up the company to do something. So as aid givers and as sort of strategists for how to make development work, the best thing is to make sure there's a reliable source of power, a reliable system of law and contract, a reliable set of roads that you can drive on, an airplane that you can arrive in, you know, all these basic public infrastructure, public sector things. If you get all those things right, then private individuals will invest if they see profits. And they will see profits if the other impediments are taken away. So I think there's a kind of a historically inaccurate side to this. Sometimes people say, oh, I've understood, you know, eureka, you know, the thing is to go help these private. It's a slightly bizarre take.